permission, could I have the witness approach this stand? And sir, I'm referring to Exhibit 406. Put this here. Let me give you this. Okay, if you would, sir, if you would just point out to us, please, your starting location at 10 Faison Street. You see that on the map?
Street's right down at the bottom of the map here.
And if I could, I'm just going to ask you if you would stand on this side of the chart so everyone can see. Okay. And you indicated just before the lunch break certain number of streets that you traveled. Could you just show us the route of travel and just indicate the streets that you took going from Faison Street when you first indicated you took a right onto Blue Hill Avenue?
From Faison Street, took a right onto Blue Hill Avenue, proceeded up to Moreland Street, took a right turn onto Moreland Street, which is roughly in this general area right here. Then took a left turn onto Dennis Street. Now we're at Dudley, took a left turn on Dudley, back to the intersection with Blue Hill Avenue. Proceeded through Blue Hill Avenue, took a slight right turn onto Hampton Street, continued on to Melnia Cass Boulevard, took a right turn, came to the intersection with Massachusetts Avenue, crossed over onto the Mass Ave connector, continued down, crossed Route 93, took a left onto Frontage Road, came down Frontage Road to this general area here where there is an on-ramp to Route 90 to go west. And this is west on Route 90, the turnpike.
Okay. Now, if we start at 10 Faison Street, sir, you had indicated when I had asked you about the most direct route of travel, you described a particular route that you could more directly get up to Melnia Cass?
Correct.
Okay, can you just show where that is?
So we would take Blue Hill Avenue and continue north on Blue Hill Avenue rather than turning right onto Moreland to go to Dennis. If you continued on Blue Hill Avenue, you would get to the same intersection of Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley without the use of Moreland and Dennis Street.
Okay. And in between those locations where you indicated there was a less direct route, what caused you to travel, or let me ask it this way, did you check surveillance along the more direct route as you were following your path on Blue Hill Avenue?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what did you find with regard to the silver Nissan Altima?
At a certain point, I could not see the silver Nissan Altima.
Okay, and then were you able to recover it on a road adjacent to Blue Hill at the intersection of Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley?
Yes.
Okay, was that on the city camera?
Yes.
And can you just point out where you then observed that again?
At Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley right here is where I observed it.
Okay. Now, from that point forward, was the line of travel that you tracked, was that the most direct route to get up to Frontage Road and therefore toward the Mass Pike?
Yes.
Okay. And just with regard to Route 93, do you see that shown on the map? Okay, and again, does that go to the south?
From the Mass Ave connector, you can go south or to the other points going north.
Okay, and just if you would track Route 93 or the central artery on that map.
To the north, to the south.
Okay. Now, with regard to when you indicated that you then drove through Mass Ave and then on the Mass connector up onto Frontage Road, show us where that intersection is, sir.
Mass Ave connector goes over Route 93, both north and south, and then the next road you run into is, you can only take a left turn to go onto Frontage Road.
Okay. And what is the exit, if you were coming from the south on on Route 93, the central artery, what is the exit to get off in that location?
If I understand you correctly, coming on 93 north to get to this general area, you would
Yes.
take exit 18, which would bring you up to this same location.
Okay. Is there a stoplight there?
There is.
And if you wanted now to go towards Facein Street, which way would you go?
You would have to take a left going west.
Okay, and when you take a left, do you cross over, are you crossing over any road?
You're now crossing over Route 93, both north and south.
Okay, so is there a bridge there?
Yes.
Now, if you stopped right on top of that bridge and you look north, are you familiar with where Albany Street is?
Yes, I am.
And is there a camera, again, right at that intersection?
There is.
And when you look north towards Albany Street, are you familiar with a building there that has a cell tower?
Yes.
Okay, and what is, do you know what the address is there?
I know it's Albany Street.
Okay, and can you just describe the building that it's on?
It's a several-story brick structure with a cell tower actually facing, or equipment for cell towers facing the Route 93.
Okay, and just before, or as you're getting on exit 18, are you familiar with a building called the Fortress Building?
Yes.
And what type of building is that?
It's a storage facility.
Okay, and are you aware of any cell tower equipment on that building?
Yes.
Okay, and did you, at some point, did you review surveillance footage from cameras located, as you've described, the intersection of Frontage Road and the Mass Connector?
Yes.
And did you look post 2:30 in the morning?
Yes.
And did you also look back to approximately 2:24 in the morning?
Yes.
And just in terms of your observation, did you observe a car at around 2:24 in the morning at that intersection?
Yes.
And which way did the car go at that time?
The vehicle had come up Frontage Road and took a left to go west on the Mass Ave connector.
Okay, and what type of vehicle was it?
Nissan Altima.
Okay, and color-wise?
Silver.
Okay. And with regard to, have you driven that same route at that, if you would put the pointer up there, to that location, have you driven from that point going now in reverse down to Facein Street?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated you observed this Nissan Altima at 2:24.
Yes.
How long did it take you to drive from that point going to 10 Facein Street?
Approximately 8 minutes.
Okay, so if it were 2:24, what time would that take you?
To 2:32.
Okay. Now, after you had driven this route back up to the Mass Pike, I think you indicated out to the Mass Pike was approximately 20 minutes in total.
From Facein Street, correct.
Okay. And then from the Mass Pike, Mr. I'm going to have you resume the stand. Thank you. I'll take that. And use the overhead for me. So I'm just going to show you what's been marked 183A and ask you if you recognize the scene depicted in this exhibit.
Yes.
Okay, what do you recognize this to show?
Several highways in the area
Okay,
of Boston.
all right. And just orienting you to this map, you see Boston over in this area here?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with regard to 10 Facein Street, do you recognize the general location of where 10 Facein Street is?
Yes.
Okay. Is that, where is that shown, sir?
To the right of the screen, blue line.
I'm sorry. Okay. So let me just, is that, okay, can you see it there now?
I do.
Okay. Now, does this map reflect the route of travel that you drove from 10 Faison Street to the Mass Pike?
Yes.
And then does it, from this location over here, sir, does it represent your route of travel out to the Western Toll?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And you indicated that was 20 minutes.
To the Western Toll is correct.
I'm going to show you now what was marked 183B. And you recognize what this map, the area that this map represents. Let me try it out. You see that area up there, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what is that?
It's the Western Toll area where the Mass Turnpike intersects with Route 128.
And so just now, using that as a point of orientation, does that reflect your route of travel that you described just before the lunch break?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And I think you indicated a certain amount of time that it took you to travel from the Western Toll down 128 to the intersection of Route 95?
Yes.
And that was how long, sir?
Approximately 10 minutes.
And I'm just going to show you excuse me, 183C. I'm going to ask you if you can point yourself to this map. Slide it down. Do you recognize this area up here, sir?
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
That's where I turned on to Route 95 going south from Route 128.
Okay. And from that location, where did you, at some point did you travel and then eventually stop?
Yes.
And where did you travel to and stop?
To 22 Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Okay. Did you make a stop prior to that?
Yes.
And where was that?
Corliss Landing?
Now, does this map accurately reflect your route of travel?
Yes.
What is this route here?
Route 95?
Okay, and at what exit did you get off Route 95?
Exit 5.
And where did you go from there?
At exit 5, I took a right onto Toner Boulevard, and then a right onto John Deach.
Okay, and then where from there?
I proceeded on John Deach to Corliss Landing.
Okay. And eventually, did you actually pull off the road in an area at Corliss Landing?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How long did it take you from the intersection of 128 and Route 95 to where you pulled in at Corliss Landing?
Approximately 18 to 19 minutes.
Okay. So in terms of the time of travel leaving 10 Faison Street at 2:33 in the morning, hitting the toll at 2:53 in the morning, what time did you hit Corliss Landing?
Approximately 50 minutes.
And when you arrived there at 50 minutes, so that would be approximately what time, sir? Having left at 2:33 in the morning, 10 Faison Street.
About 23 minutes past 3.
Okay, that's being 3 a.m.
Correct.
And how long did you remain at that location?
I remained there for approximately 4 minutes.
Okay, and then from there, so that, when you left, what time was it?
It's approximately that 3:27.
And where'd you go from there?
I proceeded back onto John Deach, went left on Landry Avenue, right on Homeward, and then left onto Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Okay. I'm just going to place 183D on the overhead. To recognize the scene depicted here, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Does that show Corliss Landing?
Yes.
Where would that be on the map?
Approximately where the arrow is?
Is that down in this area here?
Yes, sir.
Does this, when you say the arrow, does that show your direction of travel after leaving Corliss Landing?
Yes.
Okay. And you described that you went onto John Deach and then from where? On John Deach.
Proceeded on John Deach, where you turn left. You're still on John Deach, but you're actually taking a left, and then a left onto Landry Avenue,
Okay.
and then a right onto Homewood Lane,
Okay.
and a left onto Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Okay. And when you drove that distance, how long did that take you?
Approximately 3 minutes.
Okay. So what time was it approximately?
It's approximately 3:30.
Okay. And you were now at what location?
22 Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
And sir, were you asked to travel between other points to determine the time of travel and distance?
Yes.
Okay. Do you, at some point, did you travel beginning at 22 Ronald C. Meyer to an area in Providence?
Yes.
And where did you travel to in Providence?
To the South Street Cafe.
And how did you travel from 22 Ronald C. Meyer? Can you just describe your route of travel?
Back roughly the same direction we just spoke of, back to Route 95. And once on Route 95, I went south towards Providence.
Okay. And I'm just going to place 226 on the overhead. Do you recognize this, sir, as a portion of 95 going into Providence?
Yes.
Now, once you get up onto Route 95, just tell us how did you get to the South Street Cafe?
Proceeded south into the city of Providence.
Okay.
Exited the highway. The South Street Cafe is actually not that far off the highway itself.
Okay. And did you then clock it, how long it took you driving from 22 Ronald C. Meyer to the South Street Cafe?
Yes.
And how long did it take you, how many times did you drive it, first of all?
I did it twice.
Okay, the first time you drove it, how long did it take you?
Approximately 25 minutes.
Okay, and what speeds were you driving?
I was driving with the flow of traffic. I don't believe I had an actual speed. I just went with the flow of traffic at that time.
Okay. And did you then have a second occasion then to drive from the South Street Cafe back to 22 Ronald C. Meyer?
Yes.
And did you change the speed at which you were driving?
Yes.
And what speed did you drive the second time?
For the highway portion, I drove 80 miles an hour.
Okay. And by driving at 80 miles an hour, how long did it take?
Approximately 20 minutes.
So to travel roughly, approximately, just the time of day that you were traveling to the South Street Cafe.
It was after midnight.
Okay. So in terms of the traffic conditions, just describe what they were.
Traffic conditions were light.
And to travel 12:22 and arrive at Ronald C. Meyer 12:42, so a travel time of 20 minutes. What speed did you have to travel?
I'd have to travel at 80 miles an hour on the highway.
And what about, when you say on the highway, what about whatever roads you needed to take off the highway? What speeds did you drive?
I drove roughly those, off the highway, I drove those city and town streets at approximately the speed limit.
Okay. And now lastly, sir, did you also do a drive from 22 Ronald C. Meyer to a location in the city of Boston?
Yes.
At some point, did you actually, let me back up. When you started 22 Ronald C. Meyer, did you follow the same route through the John Deach Boulevard to get out to the, Route 95?
Yes.
On this occasion, when you drove it, did you actually go a direction away from the city of Boston? Let me just ask you this. Do you recall at some point driving south on Route 95 down to the area of Collins Street?
Yes.
Okay. And the area of Collins Street, is there a commercial area down there?
Yes.
Just describe what that area, if you would.
There's a warehouse-type building, other commercial businesses.
Okay. Are you familiar with exit 2 off of Route 95?
Yes.
And is that south of North Attleboro?
Yes, it is.
Approaching it now. Now, sir, this is the same exhibit I just had up here a minute ago, 226. Does this show Route 95, sir?
Yes.
You indicated before Providence is down in this area?
That's correct.
Okay. And exit 2, do you see, let me just zoom in here for you. Okay. Can you see exit 2 here, sir?
Yes.
First of all, are you familiar with the location of exit 2 in relation to the border between Massachusetts and Rhode Island?
Yes.
And is exit 2 in Mass or is it in Rhode Island?
It's in Massachusetts.
How close is it to the border?
Approximately 1 mile.
Okay. Now, once you, in this area here, does that show the border? Can you see the border on this map?
I can see it.
Okay. And do you know where Central Falls is?
Yes, I do.
And where is Central Falls?
Where you see Route 95 coming towards the left, bottom left of the screen, where it crosses the border there, that's Central Falls is in that area. Approximately there.
Okay, let me just move this a little bit. Can you see that now?
I can.
Okay. So, have you ever exited at exit 2?
Yes.
And just in regard to that area you described, are there any cell towers that are observable in that area?
Yes.
Okay, and where is that?
Right on the property of a business on Collins Street.
Okay. Now, sir, at some point, did you then, did you measure the distance between, or travel between Ronald C. Meyer and Collins Street?
Yes.
And approximately how long were you driving the prevailing speed?
Yes.
And how long did that take you?
Approximately 11 minutes.
Now, just yes or no, did you review certain cell phone records to establish certain times that you were then going to measure distances between?
Yes.
And did you after reviewing those, did you begin in the area of Collins Street?
Yes.
And from Collins Street, did you head north on Route 95?
I did.
And are you familiar with a cell tower in the area of Foxborough?
Yes.
And did you time the travel time between Collins Street and the Foxborough cell tower?
Yes.
And how long was that?
It's approximately 13 minutes.
Do you recall what time that you were traveling?
I don't recall specifically on that one.
Okay. In terms of the speed that you were driving, what speed?
Approximately the speed limit.
Okay. I could approach the overhead again, Ron? Me. I'm just going to put up 182A on the screen. And sir, after you had traveled beginning in the vicinity of the Collins Street cell tower and the Foxborough Tower, where did you go from there?
Proceeded north on Route 95.
Okay. And when you proceeded north on 95, are you familiar with an area known as Blue Hills Express?
Yes.
Okay. And did you time the drive time from Collins Street to Blue Hills Express?
Yes, I did.
And how long did it take you to drive between those 2 points?
That was approximately 24 minutes.
And once you reached Blue Hill Express, did you continue your drive from there?
Yes.
And how long, where did you drive from there?
From Blue Hills Express on Route 138, I proceeded on to 93 north towards Boston.
Okay. And where did you go when you started heading back on 93 towards Boston?
I took the exit 18 to head down towards Faison Street.
And so, would you have passed the Fortress Building?
Yes,
And as well that building you described on Albany Street?
that's correct.
Okay. And how long did it take you leaving from Blue Hill Express to get to 10 Faison Street?
It's approximately 20 minutes.
And so leaving at approximately 2:12 from the Blue Hill Express, what time, how much time would it take, or what time would you arrive at 10 Faison Street?
Approximately 2:32.
If I could have a moment, Your Honor, please. And sir, are you familiar with the Enterprise rental on Washington Street in North Attleboro?
Yes, I've seen it.
Okay. And do you know from 22 Ronald C. Meyer, do you know what distance that is approximately?
Approximately 2 to 3 miles,
Okay. In terms of driving time?
2 to 3 minutes.
Okay. And are you also familiar with the location of the North Attleboro Police Station?
Yes,
And just in terms of its location or distance from 22 Ronald C. Meyer, how far is that approximately?
take approximately 5 minutes to go to the police station itself.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Trooper DeMont.
Good afternoon.
You've done these drives a number of times, is that right?
That's correct.
So, do you know a detective from the North Attleboro Police Department named Ciccio?
Yes, sir.
And did you make a couple of drives between Faison Street and Ronald C. Meyer Drive with him?
One, I believe.
You remember June 24th, 2013, that you and Trooper Tarbokas and Ciccio made a round trip?
That's correct.
And you were driving, correct?
Yes,
And you drove from North Attleboro to 10 Faison Street, right?
yes,
And that was at about 12:30 in the morning, correct?
correct.
And Trooper, is it Tarbokas?
Yes, sir.
Tarbokas was videotaping it,
That's correct.
and Detective Ciccio was writing notes about the times when you passed things.
Correct.
And on that occasion, you were driving at the speed limit, is that right?
That's correct.
And then you retraced your steps following the same route. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the route you had taken was to go to Interstate 95, up to 128, and then take 93 up the Southeast Expressway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then on June 24th, that day, you came back in that same way.
That's correct.
You didn't take the turnpike.
That's correct.
And you prepared a report about that travel and how long it took?
I don't believe I did.
You've seen Detective Ciccio's report about that?
I may have.
Does that appear to be his report about that evening's activities?
Yes, it does.
And were you accompanied, you weren't driving your cruiser, correct?
That's correct.
You were driving a Nissan Altima,
Correct.
one that had been rented for that purpose,
Correct.
not the vehicle involved in this case,
That's correct.
but a similar model,
Correct.
to try to give it some realistic taste, so to speak.
I'm not sure the reason for it.
Did you decide to rent it?
I didn't.
You know who did?
I don't.
Somebody just gave you an Altima and said, here, we're going to take this on the route?
That's about right.
Do you remember who that was?
It was arranged through someone in North Attleboro Police.
Okay. So on that trip, you drove the posted speed limit, correct?
Correct.
And you left Ronald C. Meyer Drive at 1:12 in the morning?
I believe so.
See the entry in Detective Ciccio's report?
Yes.
And you got to 10 Facein Street at 2:37? I'm sorry.
Yes.
So that was about an hour and 25 minutes
Approximately.
from 1:12 to 2:37.
Yes.
And that was going to speed limit.
Yes.
I'm just going to object because I think it's just speak to something.
Okay. So, was that a straight drive, or did you stop along the way at different points?
We did stop.
Okay. And do you remember where you stopped?
Yes.
Where?
Blue Hills Express.
Okay,
gas
how long
station.
did you stop there?
I don't recall exact time that we stopped.
About a half hour?
It's possible.
1:37 to 2:14?
Yes.
Okay. And then you did a similar drive back from Facein Street back to Ronald C. Meyer Drive.
Correct.
All right. And then you took another trip on July 15th,
That's correct.
right? And that was about 3 weeks later? 3 weeks after June 24?
Approximately.
All right, so this time, it's you and Detective Ciccio and Trooper Mackin, correct?
That's correct.
Now, on that first trip, did you have a police escort?
No.
Was there a police car accompanying you at any points along the way?
There were vehicles at different locations, yes.
And do you recall that there was, have you looked at the video of that trip?
I have not.
Okay. Do you recall that there were cruisers with, police cars with blue lights flashing at various points along the way.
Yes,
And that was to facilitate your travel.
correct.
Okay. And so on July 15th, you repeated this trip in some respects, right?
Correct.
And this was at 2:33 in the morning, right?
Yes,
And this time you were driving an unmarked state police cruiser.
correct.
And was it the same situation that you had police vehicles at different points along the way facilitating your travel?
No, I don't believe we did.
Okay. Did you have your lights on? Your blue lights on?
No,
Okay. And during this trip, you were driving on the highway at about 70 or 75.
correct.
Okay. And was that the trip that you were describing with Mr. McCauley on direct examination? The one from Facein Street up via the Turnpike and then down 95, 128 to 95?
Yes,
Okay. And those were the times where it took you about 10 minutes from Facein Street to the Turnpike entrance and about 10 minutes to the 128 tolls?
correct.
Okay. And you also did some other driving for purposes of this case, is that right?
That's correct.
So on October 15, you took a drive from Ronald C. Meyer Drive to the South Street Cafe, correct?
Correct.
And that was with Trooper Donovan?
Yes,
And then you took another drive from Ronald C. Meyer Drive to the police station, North Attleboro Police Station?
correct.
And then a drive from the cell tower at Exit 2 up to Blue Hills Express?
Yes,
Okay. And those were done at about 6:30, starting at 6:30 in the evening?
correct.
And you first did the one to South Street Cafe,
Yes,
and then the shorter trip to the police station,
yes,
and then the longer trip from the cell tower up to Blue Hills Express.
correct.
And then you did some more traveling on October 20th, 2014.
Yes,
And this was about 7:30 in the evening.
approximately.
And you went from the Blue Hills Express up to Facein Street.
Yes,
And you were traveling 55 miles an hour on that trip.
I don't recall my speed on that trip.
Is that a copy of your report?
Yes, it is.
So the first trip I asked you about was from Blue Hill Express to Facein Street, and I asked you if that was about 55 miles an hour.
And that's accurate.
Okay. And then you took a second leg of that trip from Facein Street down to the intersection of Route 128 and 95, correct?
Yes,
And were you going about 55 miles an hour for that trip as well?
yes,
And that trip you took via the Mass Turnpike, correct?
correct.
So this time, unlike the one you described in direct examination, you were not going 70 to 75, you were just going 55,
Correct.
okay? And then on October 24th, you did some more drives, is that right?
Yes,
That's this past year, right?
that's correct.
And at this point, you drove from the Blue Hill Express to Facein Street,
Yes.
right? And this time you set it on cruise control to 75 miles an hour,
Yes,
right? And this was 10:30 at night.
correct.
Were there any police vehicles accompanying you so that you could actually go that fast
No,
without, you just set it on and went?
I did.
And you were able to do that?
Yes,
Okay. And then you drove the local route from Melnia Cass to 10 Facein Street, right?
yes,
Did you have any local police helping with that drive?
no,
Okay. And then you took a drive that same night from 128 and Interstate 95 in Canton down to Ronald C. Meyer.
Yes.
All right? And then finally, you drove from the cell tower up to exit 8 in Sharon, is that right?
Yes.
Is that the vicinity of one of those cell towers you were talking about?
There is a cell tower in that location.
All right. And then you did another drive on October 7th, where you went from Ronald C. Meyer Drive to South Street Cafe, correct?
Yes,
And that on that occasion, you went about 80 miles an hour.
that's correct.
All right. Now, you referred to some video that you obtained. You had the Faiston Street video from 9 Faiston Street. I think you referred to that, right?
Yes,
So that had already been collected by Boston police officers by the time you were asked to get involved in that. Is that right?
that's correct.
And I think you referred to a Detective Sergeant Stratton,
Yes,
and he's with the Boston Police Department,
yes, sir.
and he was asked to assist in this investigation.
Yes,
And it was he who determined that there was surveillance footage from city-operated cameras that might be relevant to the investigation, correct?
yes,
And he interfaced with the appropriate city agency and furnished those images to you.
yes,
And he, in fact, accompanied you to several of the local establishments in the city of Boston as you went around trying to collect video evidence that might be relevant.
yes.
Thank you.
Sir, is it fair to say one of your purposes in doing a drive is to determine what speed between, what speed can be traveled between certain points?
Yes,
Okay. And when Mr. Rankin was asking you questions about some of these routes of travel, when you first did the first drive, did you have some information?
yes,
Okay. As time went on, in terms of when he asked about later drives, did you have additional information?
yes.
And with that additional information, what were you attempting to determine by doing subsequent drives?
To determine if that drive was actually possible.
Okay.
The information I'm being given, does it fit with the type of drive that could be done?
Okay. And did you also make efforts to determine, if possible, at what speed possible?
Yes,
Okay. And were you able to determine from your travel between these points that all those times, those drive times that you've testified to about are or were possible?
Objection.
Sustained. Okay. When you've described certain driving times in this courtroom, were you able to drive between those 2 points in that time?
yes,
Okay, and when I was asking you questions about those drive times, did any of them rely on police escorts?
no, not an escort.
And the additional information that caused you to go and do additional drives were what?
Objection.
Sustained. Okay. Well, let me just ask you this. Had you reviewed certain surveillance in the course of this investigation?
Yes,
And did you review certain documents?
yes,
And did you also review certain toll records?
yes.
And as a result of that, or what, if any, effect did that have on your determining or going back out and driving again?
Well, those records would eliminate some of the routes that I may have originally run. It would narrow down the different routes that could have been taken.
Okay. Now, initially, and I think Mr. Rankin had asked you on one of your first trips to Boston from Ronald C. Meyer, you drove 95 to 128 to Faiston Street, and then the return essentially backtracked that same route. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Did you later have any information that caused you to change the return route?
Yes.
And what information was that?
Specifically, a toll booth photo in Weston.
And as a result of that, did you then drive from face on the return, drive up and down the Mass Pike?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing else.
When you say you didn't have a police escort, there were occasions when police were assisting in this.
I'm just going to, I think the question was just on the times that he's testified to here today. He didn't rely on the police escort. Not that he didn't have one on the time that Mr. Rankin had questioned.
Let me try to read.
Okay.
There were other police officers accompanying you on these various travels. Is that fair?
I don't recall all the locations they were at.
But there were police officers in various locations on different drives. Is that right?
On one drive in particular.
Yeah. And which drive was that?
That was the first drive that you referenced in June 24th, I believe.
And that was when you got into the city of Boston and you had a bunch of Boston police cruisers that were facilitating your travel.
No, sir.
No? Okay. What were they doing?
I don't believe we had any Boston police cruisers there.
State troopers?
I don't recall there being anyone there. There was no one there in Boston.
Yeah, I may have misunderstood you. I thought that you said that you had police officers involved in the route of travel in some way?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what that was.
I remember there being police officers in the North Attleboro area, the industrial park area, at certain intersections. Their exact purpose, I don't recall what it was.
Okay, you didn't arrange for them to be there,
I did not.
but someone arranged for them to be there, clearly.
That's correct.
And you recall traveling in Boston with Detective Ciccio and a trooper, a different one on each trip, and having police cars in the city of Boston facilitating your travel?
I would say no.
You wouldn't, and you haven't looked at video and seen
I haven't looked at the video.
blue flashing lights that you passed by?
I don't recall.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Nothing else. Thank
You may
you.
step down.
Thank you.
Is that all for today, Ms.
Yes, Your Honor, that other witness would be carried over to tomorrow.
We're going to stop at this point today. Also tomorrow, I have something I need to go over with counsel in the morning before the first witness testifies. So instead of having you, I'm going to suggest you come a little later tomorrow, so minimize the amount of time you have to wait in the jury room. So why don't you be at, arrive at 9:30 at the parking lot. Please keep your mind suspended. Don't discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else, family member, stranger, acquaintance, anyone at all. You can't talk about this case, your jury service, or Mr. Hernandez, or anything at all related to this case. And if anyone starts any form of communication with you, asking you a question, anything at all, please just stop it, end it immediately. Please continue to avoid anything about the case or Mr. Hernandez that could appear in any newspaper, or radio, or television, or magazine, or any other news media, and also anything that might appear in any social media, Facebook, Twitter, any other form of social media. Please do not do any research about this case, Mr. Hernandez, or anything at all that you think could be relevant to the case in any way, in any location, and any source. We'll see you tomorrow morning again at 9:30, and the intent is to stop tomorrow, as I had indicated, at 1 tomorrow.
Heed, heed, heed. All persons having anything further to do before the Honorable, the Justice E. Susan Gosh of the Superior Court, now sitting at Fall River within and for the Commonwealth, depart and give your attendance here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., to which time and place the sitting of this court is now adjourned. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Court is now adjourned. Adjourned.
Be here by 8:45 tomorrow, assuming we have, Mr. Bradley should be here by then.
I think you should be.
We could maybe start a little earlier. Thank you.